Going on, Canada? This is Matthew Green, your very proud member of Parliament, with another session of Parliament to the People. I spent the last couple of days just getting together a bit of a media room. Today, we're trying Restream, which should hopefully be live streaming us across multiple platforms. Twitter, not Twitter, actually, I deactivated Twitter. LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook Live, you name it. We should be live streaming across all those platforms. So, from where I'm sitting right now, we're doing everything we can to connect people to the process of government, both in person and online, which is why the platform Parliament to the People is going to be such an important part of our campaign. We're out here, trying to connect with folks and test out this technology, but also bring people into the process. Because while the conversations might start online, it's going to be very important for us to connect with people where they're at, to go door to door, street to street, neighborhood to neighborhood, but in this new age, to digitally door knock. So if you're tuning in today, welcome to Parliament to the People. We are live and direct. We are live and direct across multiple platforms, having discussions, chatting with people. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. I should be able to see that A-OK. Good morning, Carl. I appreciate you. See, it looks like things are working out all right. Let me just go ahead and open this up. I have some new technology, so forgive me if it comes off a bit choppy, if I'm a little bit preoccupied doing a couple of things at once. We're going to test this out this morning, and we're going to work out all the bugs, because it's my intention that if not every day, maybe even a couple times a day, we jump on here and just get a chance to connect with people where they're at. Maybe you're at work, maybe you're at home, maybe you're working from home, who knows? But if you have questions about all the confusion and all the noise that's happening out there right now in your neighborhoods, in the country, certainly with Trump tariffs and the looming recession globally in the world is upside down, but we are still in it, then I'm going to invite you into the discussion. So feel free to add questions wherever you are watching this from. If you're tuned in from LinkedIn, shout out to you. If you're on YouTube, wherever it is, we should be able to get the questions in the comment section to be able to engage with people where they're at. So that's what it is. Parliament to the People. We are all systems go down here at our campaign office, which is on Main and Huxley. And we have everything set up. And every day we have people coming in, calling our neighbors, having discussions within the city of Hamilton, talking about the issues that matter to you. Most importantly, listening. It's going to be very important that over these next couple of days, we get a chance to connect with folks. What is this carbon tax nonsense? That is a fantastic question, Robin, because that's been the question people have been asking for the last 2 years. Why? Because Pierre Poilievre has made that his campaign issue. New Democrats had a different climate policy in 2018 going into the 2019 election. And I think it's a value that we still hold, which is that those that pollute should pay. Now, the challenge with carbon tax, it's a consumer tax. So what does that mean? It ends up on your heating bills. It ends up on your gas bills. It is disproportionately, in my estimation, impacting working class people by putting a distributed model on the tax on carbon and then giving a rebate to those that qualify down the line. The problem with that, though, is if you're on a lower income, fixed income, if you're working class, you need money in your pocket now. And so that added burden was a problem for people. I think it would be naive not to acknowledge that in a time of increasing inflation, rising costs, that this particular program didn't necessarily do the things that it said it was going to do in the climate world, but also, disproportionately impact working class people. So the proxy war that Pierre Poilievre waged on the country was about scrapping the tax, axe the tax, and all this other nonsense. And then the leader of the Liberal Party, the newly, installed and sworn in Prime Minister, Mark Carney, the first thing he did is he just went ahead and moved that rate down to zero. So what does that mean? Well, based on Pierre Poilievre, that means all of your bills should magically become cheaper. And for some of them, it might. But for those that are held by private corporations, i.e. oil and gas, I doubt it. I'm a skeptic. I actually happen to think they're going to keep the rates the same, and the big corporations that are actually doing the polluting are going to be the ones that actually pocket the rest of the money. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I don't think you can tax your way out of climate change. I do think that there are better situations that we can be in. Cap and trade is one of them, where big companies who do most of the pollution have to trade and buy and purchase and offset their carbon emissions. Hello from Liberia. What's going on to you? I love to see people connecting from all over the world. Shout out to the LIB. Shout out to you, Robertson. I appreciate you for tuning in. We've had people tune in from Ghana, Liberia, Nigeria, you name it. We've had all the continentals tuning in to Parliament to the People. That is an amazing point. So Robertson, you're in Liberia right now. What do you make of all of the news that is coming out of the United States of America? I know that Liberia is the first independent African republic founded by emancipated slaves who returned and in many ways reinstituted some of the colonial structures in Liberia. But certainly there's a close relationship between Liberia and the United States of America. So what do you all think right now of Donald Trump? I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that. And if you're just tuning in, shout out to you, Parliament to the People. We are live and direct. So let me just go ahead and see who else we got on here. Oh, yes. People will still drive. Yes, they will still drive, Robin. They're going to still drive. It's just going to cost them more. That was a fact. But I have no faith that the oil and gas sector is actually going to pass on the tax savings to consumers. I feel like that is not going to be the case. And rather than money coming back into government and going back out to the people in the form of rebates, these big corporations are going to be pocketing the profits. That's why Pierre Poilievre wanted to axe the tax. It wasn't for me and you. It was for big oil and gas, because the Conservative Party is absolutely a corporate captured party. They are corporately captured by the oil and gas companies. And what does that mean? Well, in times of massive upheaval, in times of catastrophic climate change, where we're seeing forest fires and we're seeing, floods and all of these other types of climate disasters, that those who are driving that are going to continue to profit. And as long as they continue to profit, we're going to be in the challenge here. So if you're tuning in from Facebook, shout out to you. We got some folks from Facebook. Feel free to ask questions in the comment section. Trump is a fool. Yeah, he most certainly is. Donald Trump is a problem. He's going to be a problem for all of us. There is no doubt about that. And in the meantime, we have to build power and resiliency within our own communities to be able to offset the economic disruptions that are coming our way. Look, it doesn't matter whether these tariffs are fully implemented or not. The cause and effect has already occurred. Companies are laying off Canadian workers. The exports that we used to have are starting to dry up. Those contracts are drying up because companies in the States that are importing Canadian goods, be it steel, be it what have you, they're uncertain. They're very, very uncertain. So in an uncertain economy, people are going to go ahead and they're going to retreat into, into whatever they know to be certain. And so for them, that could look like their branch plants in Canada moving some of their production, or at least the book of the business, back to the United States of America. That is a problem in the short term, a huge economic problem for Canadian workers. There is no doubt about that. So we got lots of folks. Yeah, Lucas says 100%. Shout out to you, Lucas. If you got any questions, feel free. If there's anybody who wants to jump on this is a new way that I'm doing this. I'm not 100% sure how this might work, but I'm willing to try it. If there's people who want to jump on, let me know that you're willing to join us in the discussion. And I will do what I can to send you a link and bring you on. It's a little bit different than when I used to just do straight to Instagram. That was a bit of a more simple process, but but we can still do that and try that here with Restream. Hopefully what you're seeing is clear. Hopefully the sound is good. We spent a lot of time over the last week setting up this little media studio here, bringing Parliament to the People, working to talk with folks where they're at, meet them where they're at, and be honest about the conversations that are happening, unfiltered. No spin, live and direct. You get a chance to do that right here, right now. So, serious question. Will Hamilton ever get a drug treatment center? And if not, why not? Our streets are showing a real problem, hits too close to home. Absolutely. There are uh, harm reduction, as you know, Robin, likely harm reduction projects here. In terms of the drug treatment centers, I believe that we do have them. Let me go ahead and just see what I can find online, but it's certainly not meeting the need. I think what you identified is quite right, that we are in a dire situation with people who are grappling and struggling with drug use and addictions. And what we don't have is adequate healthcare, psychological support, economic support for people. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I think there's lots of social science research that suggests that when you take care of people's material conditions, if you look to other places around the world, Scandinavia is a good example, Portugal is a good example, where you take care of people that are dealing with addictions, because addictions, drug use, those are healthcare issues, right? Those are social healthcare issues. So when people lose control or the ability to be able to manage their recreational drug use and it becomes a problem, we need to have supports for people in place that are in a healthcare model and not, in my opinion, in a law enforcement model. Because once you criminalize um, drug use, so we've seen how that works. The war on drugs is a failed social policy. It does not work. So right now I'm checking out drug centers in Hamilton. I'm seeing what we can find. Toronto, it looks like Bellwood is one. Canadian Center for Addictions. Home Based Recovery. Waywood House. We have the OATC Clinic. We do have Wayside House, Men's Withdrawal Management Center. We do have rehabilitation centers, many of them in Hamilton. I'm just clicking it up right now. Many of them in Hamilton that I don't know if I can share my screen. That's another thing I'm looking to do. I'm new to Restream, so what do we got here? Screen share. Let's see if we do that. Hamilton, and we go there. What if we just do tab? Share. Let's see what happens there. Hopefully you can see that we do have drug treatment centers, addiction treatment centers in Hamilton. Many of them, some of them not far from where I'm at right now. But as you've pointed out, whatever we're doing right now is not working. Like, that's fair to say. It is fair to say that what we are doing right now is not working. How do we know that? Because far too many people are suffering with mental health, with addictions, and with drug use that they cannot control. And I don't want to create this as a pathology, but I would say that, you know, all you have to do is look to people suffering to understand that our current systems are wholly inadequate. And again, I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a drug expert by any stretch. So this is just coming from a place of personal opinion. But I feel once somebody is in that situation, particularly if they're houseless, if they don't have family supports, that it is at the end of the issue and the challenge. I think a caring and compassionate society would have care and interventions at the beginning of the kind of the cycle of drug use that would lead to addictions. So, in other words, by the time somebody finds himself houseless in the streets, dealing with addictions, be it the fentanyl crisis, the opioid crisis, or what have you, it is the symptom of a series of failures within our system to be able to adequately support people. So, I appreciate that question that you posed there, Robin. It's not enough, you say. There's too much red tape stopping people from getting treatment. Yeah, a lot of NIMBYism. A lot of people say that they want to see solutions to houselessness, encampments, drug use, drug sale, and all of this types of thing. Um, you know, Injections, whether it's in our alleyways or our parks, having drug use there. They say that stuff, but then if there's a treatment center that might be in their neighborhood, immediately the NIMBY comes up and they don't want nothing to do with that. So that's a problem. One of the challenges, Jason says, is that people do not understand civics in Canada. Amen to that, Jason. You would be shocked at, and I'm not saying this to shame people, but of the lack of general understanding on how our levels of government work, who's responsible for what, and ultimately who you should be holding accountable. A prime example of that is that right-wing populist movement, the convoy movement, the anti-vax movement, the trucker convoy stuff. Those were provincial mandates, federally regulated perhaps, but most truckers that were working earnestly had to be vaccinated if they ever wanted to travel to the States. So people just don't fully understand and appreciate how government works. I know I'm a little bit all over the map, but I'm trying my best to answer the questions that are here. We have Robinson from LIB who says, personally, I think the actions of the U.S. president is not considerate to other nations. All these sudden changes in policy are causing economic problems, especially for governments in Africa. But we will get those with just in time when we can wean off of U.S. aid. And politicians and plans of the President Trump are troubling the world. It's a good thought. When is Sanford Avenue turning into a two-way street? That's a good question. That is also a municipal question. So that is something that I looked at back when I was on city councilor. I was able to successfully convert Wentworth into two-way, but I have not been able. Well, obviously I left before Sanford came up. So we have Lucas who says, I saw your proposed, my piece on the Alto rail line. I absolutely agree that our rail should be publicly owned and that new transformative projects like that should not be given over to the private interests. However, I'm a strong believer in perfect not being the enemy of the good, probably is what you say here, of the better. Would you agree or disagree that even if the project is flawed in being P3, that just having a rail line moving forward to get built would also be impactful and worth doing so regardless? I don't know. I don't know is the answer, Lucas, because what I have seen are P3 projects that privatize all the profits and socialize all the risks. In other words, the public pays out of their pocket for these projects that go well over budget, well over time, and don't actually deliver on what it is they promise to deliver. What we need is fast, frequent, reliable, safe public transit. What that looks like, high-speed rail, certainly. We already have a Crown Corporation, as you know, Lucas, Via Rail should be owning and operating this thing. There is no need to turn a multi-billion-dollar publicly funded project into another goddamn 407 debacle. There's no need to do that. And so what liberals do, big L liberals do, is they jam us with these false dilemmas that it's take the worst common denominator and nothing. And then when the project begins, like we saw here in LRT in Hamilton, it becomes a dog's breakfast because nobody's accountable. The private corporations aren't accountable. The local communities are left in the lurch. Politicians have already cut the check. It's been cashed. Likely more demands for money because of overcosts are coming. And so do we need to be caught in that hustle? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that flawed, privatized, they say P3, all they mean by that is the public pays and the private companies profiteer. That's what they mean. So that's, I guess, a P4. Public pays, private profits. I think that's the P4 model that they're not really honest about. But from a straight, like reducing emissions, yeah, sure. Absolutely. There needs to be high-speed rail throughout the corridor from, say, Windsor all the way to Montreal and beyond. I can agree with that. Provided the proviso, Lucas, you mentioned Canadian steel and aluminum, there has to be a community benefits clause that includes buy Canadian, build Canadian, and why stop at just the steel? We should have manufacturing take care of those things because free trade has been torn up, and what's left is an economy that needs to increasingly shift towards our domestic markets. We can find other partners in Europe and in the, in Latin America and Mexico and other places, but I digress. Lots of chat happening on Facebook. I'm actually simulcasting. I'm live streaming to both my personal and my political uh, live streams. And is this going out to Instagram? I don't know. What do we got? We have YouTube. It's being live streamed too. Update channel. Provide a new. Oh, it looks like I didn't make it to Instagram, but that's okay. I'm going to have to do that again next time because we're just working this out. I'm just trying it out here to see how this goes. How does it sound? Does the sound and camera work okay for those that are tuning in? Let me know in the comment section if you're tuned in from Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're at. We're still working out the bugs. This is Parliament to the People. If you're just tuning in, welcome. Shout out to you, Peggy. It's been a minute. You'll recall we used to do Parliament to the People all the time during COVID, and then it increasingly became a challenge, but we're back at it. Peggy says, I agree. We should change that to the P4. We should change that. Facebook, very okay. Oh, here we go. I'm looking through the comments. Change the P4 to be honest. It has to be all Canadian products or trade partners such as the EU. Hi from Burlington, Matt. Hello, Peggy. We appreciate you joining us. Hi, June. Hello to everybody. We appreciate you logging in. Don't know how long I'm going to be on this morning, but nevertheless, we are here. We are live and direct. Parliament to the People. If you see me online and you want to join us, feel free to do that. You can just log on. If you want to invite yourself to the discussion, you can do that too. Just let me know and I can send you an invitation. It will bring you on to the restream and you too will get a chance to connect with people across all these platforms. I am going to try to find a way to bring in Instagram. Maybe I can try that while we're doing this. So please do bear with me. It says that I need a new streaming key. So let's try that and see if it works. So let's go to live stream. And then it says Parliament to the People, audience, public, next. Let's see what happens here. Stream key, copy. You all get a chance. You get to see behind the scenes. This is how it works. I'm trying this out myself. Let's update this and see what happens. Let's see if we got, I don't know. Is this working on Instagram? I don't know. It doesn't look like it is, but we are trying to go on Instagram. Ooh, what else do we got? Too many channels. Update channel and provide a new stream. If you happen to have Instagram, are you able to check and see if I'm live streaming there? Because the answer is I don't know. I do not know. Parle to the People. Shout out to you, Peggy. Yeah, this is good. We got some folks on here. Facebook. Shout out to you. We don't really seem to have any folks logging on from YouTube, but we're testing because I haven't streamed to YouTube before. This is all new. And I don't play video games. I know a lot of the young kids are into the streaming of the video games. I ain't me. I don't do that. I'll strictly be drinking coffee and having conversations. But I do look forward to bringing people on when possible with the Restream software because I enjoy that back and forth conversation on Parliament to the People. As much as I love the comments, it's always a little bit easier when there's somebody right online. So there it is. If you catch me online tomorrow, feel free to ask you to invite yourself. Go ahead and do that. What do we got here? Let's show the little ticker. Oh, if you're interested in some of the work that we do, oh, look at this. I got a little ticker now. I'm on Restream. I'm all fancy. I'm doing my fancy live streams. Feel free to go ahead and check out my Substack where I do articles that are a little bit longer form, a little bit more nuanced, It's not about hot takes. It's about kind of more in-depth analysis. So I'll be working on that. The piece that I'm working on right now, by the way, might actually be a video. I might do this as a video, but it's going to be addressing this absurd notion that somehow New Democrats shouldn't scrutinize Mark Carney, that we should leave him alone and just simply bow out of this race and allow the liberals to continue to govern, except further to the right. That is absurd. If I wanted to run as a liberal, I would have ran as a liberal. I'm a New Democrat. I'm going to critique I'm going to critique liberals. I'm going to do that. I'm going to critique conservatives. I even have critiques for the Green Party. Whatever it is, that's how elections work. We need more democracy, not less. Those who look to the states in a two-party system and think that's working, I'm just going to say this. It's absurd. It is absurd. It couldn't be further from what is needed right now. If anything, in a proportional representative model, we would have more democracy, not less. More ideas, not less. More leadership, not less. It would be more local. It wouldn't be concentrated in these charismatic leaders, that run the entire country, like one person. We don't need that. We need deep democracy. We need a deliberative democracy. We need a republic that engages people, all the time to have these discussions. Oh, it gets me fired up, especially so-called leftists. Oh my God. The amount of people who have critiqued the NDP for not being left enough just a couple months ago are now telling us that we can't critique liberals and we just got to go along to get along. That's absurd politics. I don't understand that. If that's what you think, please do come online and let me know why you think that. Let me know why you think somebody should come in, run the country without any scrutiny. Help me understand that, because I don't get it. I do not get it. Shout out to you, Janice. I would love to have you on. Yeah. Jay Woodruff. Yo, this is what I love about Parliament to the People. So many of my comrades that obviously, lives get busy, people are going on and doing their thing, are now back in the discussion. I love to see it, and I am looking for more of this over these next couple of weeks. It is our responsibility, Janice says, who is, by the way, running in Guelph, an incredible labor leader, civic leader. Shout out to you, my sister, Janice Folk Dawson. It is our responsibility to point out liberal policies that are harmful to the working class. Yes. And the contradictions of those who profess to be supporting the working class. In other words, if you are, a multi-millionaire, I don't know how much money Mark Carney has because he hasn't declared his interests. But I know that if you're in the Goldman Sachs, Brookfield world, you are wealthier than anybody that is connected to places like Hamilton Center. I can't find commonality with Bay Street. Never mind Bay Street. This is a Wall Street guy. This isn't even a Bay Street guy. This is a Wall Street guy. And I'm, as a labor critic, as a democratic socialist, supposed to just take a knee for this guy? Wild. Not going to happen. Hate to disappoint you if you're tuned in and you think that I'm going to be Team Carney. Will not happen. Won't happen under any circumstance, by the way, because we're in an election. Allow the ideas, allow the scrutiny, allow the deliberation, the discourse to win the day. Be transparent and open with people who your interests are and who you are, about what you've been responsible for in your leadership. You can't take all the benefits of your experience and not be accountable for the outcomes of your leadership, especially in a Westminster system that doesn't elect a prime minister. Never mind, a scenario where he's not under the purview or under the accountability of our own, conflict of interest laws and disclosure. Who do you work for, Mark? I know who I work for. It's people right here in Hamilton Center. So what else do we got? What do we think about Elizabeth May calling on? Oh, let's look at this one. Shout out to you, Jason. I appreciate the engagement. To ensure protection from misinformation during the election. She used the reference as a war room to protect the election. I have to respect Elizabeth May's kind of dogged tenacity as a Green Party person Um, so the answer is, should we protect against misinformation from Trump? We should protect against misinformation and disinformation and foreign interference from all countries around the world, including those who profess to be our so-called allies. The discourse around foreign interference, and that's what we need to call it. Let's be very clear. It's not just misinformation and disinformation. That is a tactic. The strategy is foreign interference. And the entire time I've been talking about not just Russia, not just China, not just India, but we have to look at some of our so-called allies too. There is rampant foreign interference in all election cycles right now, more particularly given the way in which technology engages. And it's not even just state actors. As we know, we have technological actors. When the techno bro fascists like Elon Musk buy platforms, Peter Thiel and others are engaged in this, dark mega world to dismantle democracy right before our very eyes. When they put Google and Zuckerberg, and X or Twitter, whatever the goddamn thing, but yet the only thing they want to talk about is TikTok. Let's talk about all of them. Let's talk about all of them. So Elizabeth May, back to that statement because I didn't fully answer your question, is masterful at catching news cycles. She knows at this point that it is unlikely Mark Carney is going to recall a war cabinet that is going to include her as a Green Party that does not have anywhere near to official party status, or any of them for that matter, in these upcoming weeks. Let's be honest, the trend lines for the Liberal Party are looking pretty good. I don't know that they want to disrupt that momentum and take a step back and look at where consent is manufactured online and in other places. And it's not just Trump who does this, by the way. There are bot armies and troll farms. The one thing I can honestly say, we can't be accused of that because we can't afford that shit. We're not doing that. We don't have the money, but the money's out there. Republicans do it, Democrats do it, conservatives do it, liberals do it. It happens. There is absolutely, these same technologies being employed by the Liberal Party as well. It's just a fact. I know it like wrestles against people's perception of what the Liberal Party is, but the truth is they are absolutely engaged in how this works. We got lots of chat. Oh, we got Lucas. Shout out to you, Lucas, who might join on. All right, let me see how I can do this. Ooh, now we're getting real technical. Invite guests. Copy this. How do I do this? You know what? What the heck? I'm just going to put this out there and see if this works. I'm going to put this up there, and whoever wants to jump on can try this. Lucas, if you're able to do that, feel free to do that. I have entered the chat, and I am putting the invite list across all platforms to invite you into discussion. I appreciate you, Lucas, for a few reasons, not just because of your engagement, not just because of your civic leadership in the Brant County, but because you also help me with this technical stuff. And I know you're being a good sport doing that. So I have posted it. I think it went to both YouTube and Facebook, but it did not go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn did not like that link. Jay asked the question. Jay says, is Doug Ford signaling his hope of a conservative loss in order to take a run at prime minister with his comments about Carney and the sign of instability within their party? I don't think it's that aspirational for Doug Ford. I think he just absolutely hates Pierre Poilievre. I think their beef is deep. I think those guys hate each other. And I think any chance he can get to stick it to Pierre Poilievre, he's going to stick it to Pierre Poilievre. Because Doug Ford is in it for Doug Ford. Poilievre is in it for Poilievre. They're not necessarily ideologically aligned. They are conservatives in a conservative movement, but I think that that's where it ends. And I think that their types of conservatism are very different. I would acknowledge that. I would acknowledge that to many of the extremists in the Conservative Party of Canada, they look at Ontario, it's the oxymoron, progressive conservatives. There's no such thing as a progressive conservative, but I digress. They look at Doug Ford as a pinko commie bastard. They think Doug Ford is left wing. That's how far right Pierre Poilievre is. And I would argue that In many ways, Mark Carney is the reincarnation of progressive conservatism in this country. He's just put it under the banner of the Liberal Party. So that's what we got. I think I would argue that Doug Ford and Mark Carney ideologically have more in common than Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre. That's my argument. That Mark Carney is a progressive conservative. He is a red Tory, who's going to incarnate progressive conservative party federally under the banner of the Liberal Party. It's a lurch to the right. They've been very clear about that. So, now we got all types of folks who are going to come on. Oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. Let's do this. Let's have this. Thanks for waiting, Jay. I got on one, and now we're going to bring you on. Counselor Lucas, we're bringing you on, and we have, how am I going to do this? I don't know how this works. It's going to be interesting. We have you all ready to go. Bam! There it is. Okay, now I think I got to do something. Give me 1 sec. I haven't thought this far ahead, but I appreciate all of you for jumping on. I think I need to do this, bring this in here. I think I need to put on a little headpiece or change another setting. Let's see how that is. Lucas, can you give me a sound check? I can hear you. I can. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to freestyle. No. Jay Woodruff, my homie Jay, can you say something?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Amazing. We're doing it. I love this platform, by the way. We're now on YouTube and Facebook. Maybe we're on LinkedIn. I don't know. We will get to Instagram and TikTok on another live stream. So as we do with Parliament to the People, we're going to start. Jay, you're going to say who you are, where you're from, and what you're all about.
I'm Jay. I'm from Rockland, which is close to Ottawa, Ontario. I'm a human rights advocate focused on disability justice.
Yes, you are. And I would say one of my early engaging comrades on Parliament to the People, going back 4 or 5 years now, bro.
Mm-hmm.
5 years, man. There it is. Yo, there's the photo right there. Oh, that's incredible. That warms my heart. Counselor, let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and what you're
doing. I'm Counselor Lucas Oakley. I'm a counselor for the County of Brant, Ward 2, North End of Paris, and I'm also the former president for the Brantford Brant Riding Association, both provincially and federally.
Are you trolling me right now?
No.
Do you know why?
What? No, I don't know why.
Because you're wearing a Hamilton Bulldogs shirt on right now.
I'm wearing a Brantford Bulldog shirt right now.
Oh, dog.
As we stole your
hockey team. Damn. You're going to do me like that. You're going to show up on my live stream wearing a Brantford Bulldogs shirt. Ain't that something? That's wild. So, what do we got here now? I'm the exact address. What do we got? I got people coming into the office. We got volunteers coming through the office. Ashley, I might have to invite Ashley on the live stream when she gets here. But in the meantime, let's play this game. I'm going to start with you, Counselor. Forget about Mark Carney. Forget about parties. Let's just make it about ideas. You've now been sworn in as the Prime Minister. What's your number one priority? You'll answer that question. I'm going to take it to Jay. I know where Jay's going to go. Jay's going to get on one. So I'm going to let you start, Counselor. What's your number one priority?
First and foremost, I do think electoral reform is the first priority because it really sets us up to continue to govern well in the future. Right now with our current electoral system, there's some polls that are showing Mark Carney getting a majority, some getting Poilievre majority, and then that means they work with nobody, which inherently weakens, right now with the Ford government. The Ford government probably would have made as many blunders with, say, the Greenbelt had they had had to work with anybody. And so I really think it's important that we have an representative democracy. And Canada is inherently a left-wing country, or at least leans that direction. And I aspirationally progressive. Yeah, I think that's a good terminology. Okay. So I think that would allow those ideas to carry through more thoroughly with a representation or with a proportional representation government.
Love it. Okay, I'll take that, and I would agree. I would absolutely agree that we need more democracy, not less. We need local democracy, not democratic centralism, which is what we have right now under this kind of false Coke and Pepsi scenario where 38% of the vote has 100% of the power. Jay Woodruff, lifetime advocate, activist, civic leader, your prime minister for a day. Here's your chance. Let us know what your number one priority is.
I think it would be the same because electoral reform has so many effects. So it being the root of so many different things. Right now, we're seeing some of the lowest turnouts, if not the lowest turnouts, one after another, every level of government, coast to coast to coast. People just have given up on it. They don't see it really as an avenue for having any impact. So electoral reform, but also it's such a unique situation right now that I don't think any of us spent much of our life preparing for this type of situation with what's going on
Right.
locally and around the world. But I think, like you said, aspirationally progressive. So much of what we promote throughout the world are socialist-based concepts. We should be focused on protecting people and lifting up
Mm-hmm.
people because any kind of call for unity can't be made if there's still people forced into poverty, homeless.
Say that again, comrade. Say that again. Let's talk about it. I would love to hear your perspective. You heard my rant, but like, in what world in what world does rolling over for a Goldman Sachs investment banker, Brookfield Management, multi millionaire? And I would argue somebody in that order of magnitude is probably in the tens of millions of dollars. In other words, so far disconnected from your living condition, from the living condition here in places like Hamilton. Why is the notion of this kind of false, I wouldn't even say it's unity. I'd say they're asking for fealty. Let's talk about fealty and loyalty to these, these uh, white knight saviors, and I don't mean that racially; I mean that metaphorically, versus solidarity. Because I know, Jay, you do a lot of work around solidarity, disability justice, trying to make sure that people have enough to exist in this world free of living and being subjected to legislative poverty. So we'll put that idea of solidarity to you, Jay, and then we'll go back over to Counselor.
I think what we saw with COVID, the early stages, was everyone's initial reaction was hoarding toilet paper and preserving oneself. But then as time has gone on, it was more of pocket community. And that's what we've done since the start of COVID was a lot of people were trying to find their safe spaces because the world was becoming pretty unsafe. That's also the rise of convoys and the rise of open, unchecked hate speech. Things were starting to go really right for quite a while. At the start of COVID, it was panic. And then people's reaction was, well, we need to come together. We need to fight.
Right.
But the problem is we are so divided in our communities now that we've lost the community of the whole.
Yeah.
I think with what is going on in the world, for example, I don't like the concept of elbows up. I want hands reaching down because
Mm-hmm.
we're still not focused on pulling people up. The way
Mm-hmm.
you build any kind of solidarity is by not walking past someone to find solidarity in someone else. So
Right.
I think we need to focus more on being what we champion throughout the world and actually putting into motion in Canada the things we promote. We promote we're kind. We especially with the not for sale or never 51. There's all these talking points that people across the political spectrum are using that
Mm-hmm.
actually meaning it because there's no kindness when there's homelessness. There's no kindness when there's record number of food bank users. It's so it's becoming like a gaslit national identity.
Right.
We need to actually transition to doing the things we say we stand for.
I agree. I appreciate that. Counselor, let's hear your compelling vision of what solidarity looks like. You can use examples from Brent or anywhere that you think appropriate for the
Yeah.
discussion.
So I think, you know, to sort of touch on so the initial premise of the question, which is, with Mark Carney essentially asking all of us for their votes out of I think you've got it right, like a fealty standpoint. It's yet again sort of asking us to um funnel funds upwards, where they're going to be doing all these tax cuts for the rich, because that's supposed to trickle down to us at some point. But it's going to come at, that they're talking about balancing the operational budget. Where's that going to come from? That's going to come
Right.
from from housing, from homelessness prevention, from transferring funds to the provinces, which then they do tend to misappropriate, but in theory should be going towards um you know uh, addiction treatments, so on and so forth. It's going to be all our social programs that get cut. And we just went through our own budget process in the county of Brant, and so last year I had an emergency motion to fund gender-based violence treatment through some nonprofit organizations. That came back. It was overwhelming success. We reduced wait times down to zero, and in response to budgets being tight, what did we do? We cut all the funding in half. Now, later on, we were able to restore it to full funding, but that's just an example of the type of reaction these folks are going to have, which is, not solidarity, but we're going to just arbitrarily cut social services that our most vulnerable populations rely on, in order to arbitrarily appease, either the tax base, or the wealthy that pay the most taxes and ought to be paying more. So, it's all well and good to be like Jay was saying, to do this whole elbows up thing, except when we're leaving behind our most vulnerable populations that really aligning with the values that we share as Canadians. I would argue not.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't tell me about your values. Show me your
Mhm.
budget. Like, show me your budget. That was one of the constant refrains I had when I was on council, because they're truth telling. You could say politicians can say whatever the f they want about this, support for this or that, and Jay, you and I have been back and forth on this. I know you've been a staunch um, activist circling the stain of the disability tax credit, right? This was language that was used during COVID. And I think what the Liberal Party, the big L Liberal Party, really exposed themselves to during COVID is how they valued people. In other words, they only really valued people who were employed.
Mhm.
People who were not employed, seniors, people living with disabilities who cannot work, were left out of the supports, as though somehow the fucking economic collapse didn't impact them. As though somehow the prices in the grocery stores didn't go higher from them, that they got special lanes, and special prices, which was bullshit. And we were calling for $2,200 a month. That would be, put out there broadly to people. Anybody who qualifies for disabilities in their province should qualify for these disability supports federally, not this, like, this liberal machination of a filtered out means test where they get to make the announcement but not actually effectively distribute the funds and support to people. So I don't know, Jay, if you want to chime in just on I know this is your chance as Parliament to the people. So this is your chance to talk about, like, what those impacts look like, and what, in your experience, because certainly you don't speak for everybody, but you are online, you are connected within the communities. What did that look like to have that carrot kind of dangled and then snatched away?
First, with what you had said about politicians can say anything, and actually before that, amazing work on gender-based violence support. That's an awesome thing to hear. Um, it wasn't just one carrot. There was a bushel of carrots, one after another, and each time there was, okay, we're going to have the Canadian, I can't remember what CERB was, Canadian Emergency, whatever it stood for. And the disabled community is like, finally, we're going to actually get some help. Oh,
Right.
you're going to be excluded. Oh, okay. And then there was the fight for the federal disability benefit. And then I remember standing on the Hill with you when we were
Yep.
shocked that it actually got unanimous consent. That was another carrot. And then they even campaigned on it, another carrot. And then they named it the Act to End Poverty, and then decided not to fund it enough to end one person's poverty. And again, with everything, especially with the Liberals over the last, since I'd say 2019, 2020, there is a straight path to exclusion in everything they do. They don't go, who can we help? They go, who aren't we helping?
Right. Talk more about that.
So whenever, even with programs that they do announce, even though they don't fund it, if you go beyond um, the photo op PR portion of it, there's a long list of people who do not qualify for the thing. And then, for example, the disability tax credit is the ultimate tool that the federal government uses to exclude the disabled community. It's historically been extremely hard to obtain. It's a lot of people are charged for doctors to help them do it, and they've launched programs to make it cheaper or to help and so on. But I don't know much of them because they don't promote that type of stuff. They just want to promote, hey, we're helping the disabled, but the actual reality is a very small portion, just like with.
Right.
And unfortunately, as they were doing this, MAID was being expanded more, and I have trouble entering Zoom meetings now because of how many people are no longer there. And it's not
Wow.
because they've given up a fight for justice, it's because they're no longer here. It's been 5 years of, first it was all the unity about COVID and how we're going to survive and we're going to protect Canadians. And now it's about our sovereignty and unity and elbows up. But it's never included anyone in poverty. It's so blatantly clear. And something, a little side note, Carney is one of the people who was directly involved with forming CERB and forming or funding things. He was an advisor on these things. He personally had the list of who to exclude. It's one of those things.
I want to, so in the fairness of like, that's a big statement.
Mhm.
How do you know that to be true? Like I need to make sure that we're always showing our work, right? Like how do you know that to be true?
In my time within the NDP as committee chair and federal executive, I worked with the workplace development and disability inclusion, and I maintained a list of the targets for advocacy. At the time, it was Carla Qualtrough, and Mark Carney was someone that I didn't know who he was, but it was the name that kept coming up as the people, and Freeland was on this. These are the people who had the most relevance to the federal disability benefit. And
Okay.
and through that, you learn of a lot of the disconnected people who are very connected. So like you kind of hinted on, there's the politicians can say whatever they want,
Right.
but where are they coming up with what they're saying? They don't just.
My man brought receipts. Jay didn't just make a statement. He made the statement and actually brought the receipts. You know, Lucas, you talked about what happens when you're in the budget process. We're talking about this as policy is directed, where, you know, ideas are put forward. In many ways, it's my opinion that politicians are more like thermometers than they are thermostats. In other words, they'll say an idea, put their finger up there, see if it hits, and then they'll decide what to do with it. Liberals are notorious for announcements, but they're also notorious for not following through on them. So when announcements are made from other levels of government, your upper orders of government, and the expectation is that those things are going to be delivered in communities like yours and Brant, um, how do you all reconcile when the rubber doesn't actually meet the road? So, in other words, when the expectation is raised and people are looking to you to deliver on some of these social services, you mentioned housing as one. I'm sure there's food programs. You talked about gender-based violence as another. What does that mean effectively for you trying to manage the need, the expectation, and then the complete disconnect with the lack of actual
Yeah,
funding?
so for me, I mean, I think there's a lot of lip service that a lot of politicians do at every level, including my own level of government, where you know, for a lot of my colleagues, I think we are um, sort of passive, waiting for that funding to come in before we start moving on any projects. It's the Spider-Man meme where everyone's pointing fingers at each other of who's going to fund this. And my argument has been throughout our budget process and certainly with my motion last year on gender-based violence and in building affordable housing is that at a certain point, um, is it fair that it goes on the property tax? No. But at the end of the day, when housing doesn't get built, when there's not support for gender-based violence, when there's not food on the table for people, when food banks are empty, it the people who are suffering do not give a damn about where the tax dollars came from. At the end of the day, there's one taxpayer. So my argument is we should.
Who is the
Who is the
taxpayer?
taxpayer? Well, uh, everyone
Everyone.
exactly. So
Here's the thing. This is why I bring it up.
yeah,
I bring this. I bring this little beef up, Lucas,
yes.
because I would recall this like new subclass, not subclass. What's the opposite of sub? Like an upper class, like obviously an upper class of citizen called the homeowner. The homeowners are the ones who pay taxes, as though people who rent don't also pay taxes via their rent is absurd. And the idea that there's different classes of people who pay tax, I would argue that the lower the income you have, and the more disproportionate the impact of the
Oh,
taxes. So,
exactly.
in other words, if you're a multi-millionaire, who gives a shit if you have to pay for GST and HST? Who cares if your property tax goes up a little bit? It's a rounding error at that point. But if you're on a fixed income or you're on a low wage, low income job, um, that's a
Mhm.
problem because those shifts are material, right? And so, yeah, I always throw that out there whenever I get a chance to remind people that we are all taxpayers and our value shouldn't necessarily be like determined on how, like, our ability to pay the most amount of tax. So, in other words, it should be the proportion of what we
Mhm.
have, not, hearing people say, oh, I had to pay, yeah, money on my capital gains tax. The capital gain, yeah, because you made
Mhm.
250,000 extra dollars last year. Yeah, you got to pay a little bit more.
Yeah, and it finally enough along that lines where like people just don't understand that renters do pay property taxes. Renters have just as much ownership over community. What drove me absolutely crazy, there was an apartment building proposed somewhat recently, and there was a ton of public feedback saying, there'll be a bunch of renters in here. We don't want renters. They don't contribute the same to the
We
community,
don't want
which is
renters.
just obscene, so unbelievably obscene. The most active people in our community are happen to be renters, and they volunteer a lot more than those folks. So it's
Yeah,
not
but
it's
let's.
not tied to how you pay your where for how you live, whether it's mortgage or rent. Some people volunteer more, some people don't. It doesn't mean you have less ownership over the community. That's a
And
yeah.
the thing that fires me up the most about that bullshit is like those are the same people who are outraged when someone's living in a fucking tent. Like that's what
Mhm.
drives me nuts. Is like not like how vile and violent do you have to be to oppose housing that would house people and simultaneously denigrate people who are
Mhm.
homeless. That level of cognitive dissonance, and I'm going to say moral bankruptcy, is enraging
Yeah.
to me. Like I'm at that point, and I know people are like, "Oh, you're a politician. You can't swear. You can't." Swear. I'm fucking
Mhm.
angry about that. I'm right now in this office. I'm not a member of parliament. I'm sitting here in my campaign office, to be very clear, and I am an angry Hamiltonian who hears stories like, we can't have modest renters. First of all, there's a scenario. Let's be very clear. There is a very real scenario with companies like Brookfield and BlackRock and others big corporate real estate investment companies who are buying up communities of billions and billions of dollars at a time, where we no longer have home ownership, where individuals no longer have home ownership because the entire housing market has been a corporate capture by those predatory, right? Corporations, those parasitic corporations who want to capture the market and then jack the rents up on everybody. We're going to go back to a type of a feudalism, essentially, like a land feudalism, where companies like Brookfield and others own all the shit, own all the stock. Oh, maybe I've had too much coffee or not enough sleep. I don't know, but I'm fired up. Jay, tell me about Rockton. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, and I'm not saying this in any way as an invitation. This isn't about personal. I want to talk about what rural poverty looks like, because I think when people think poverty, they think inner cities and inner cities only. So without getting into specificity or individual stories of people, share with us in Rockton what economic disruption and low wages and high costs look like for folks that are struggling to get by in rural communities.
So first off, I do want to say something because you had hit something that really triggers something in me. Fuck respectability politics. Politics don't respect us. And then beyond that, in Rockland, any rural place, all those supports that people think of in cities normally don't exist. So, for example, in most of Eastern Ontario, there is, I believe, one actual food bank and then two community kitchens for Eastern
Okay.
Ontario for a very large.
Okay.
When it comes to things, I have 4 appointments that I've missed that are important to my health because I can't afford a car, I can't afford gas, I can't afford insurance. So I can't get to these appointments. There's no public transportation. When you go rural, normally if it's not within walking distance, you're looking at, for example, if I want to come hang out and have some coffee with you the next time you're in Ottawa,
Right.
it would be over $80 for me to go 15 minutes down the road in a cab.
Damn.
So keep in mind just that, and then sometimes the food bank's too expensive for me to go to and come back from, so I have to miss it. There's this idea, again, it goes back to what we were talking about before. There is this idea that this social safety net exists in Canada and that we take care of people. And I think it misguides a lot of people into thinking, oh, those types of stories, oh, well, now you're just nitpicking. At least there's a food bank. And that's a lot of the pushback I've got.
Yeah, you should be grateful.
Yeah.
You should be grateful that at least there's a food bank that, by the way, in Ontario, the last time I checked, 80% of the people who have to access food banks are people who are living on either Ontario disability supports or Ontario
Yeah.
Works. So, in other words, we're legislating people into deep poverty
Yeah.
and then setting up this charitable system, which is a whole other, tax. I'm going to call it a Ponzi
Yeah.
scheme, for lack of a better term, right? These big nonprofits that are a whole poverty industry in and of themselves, rather than simply giving people basic livable income, guaranteed.
Another aspect to what you two were just talking about with, I'll say, the class system. Another aspect of it is working class seems to have changed its definition. I don't know where it comes from, but the working class seems to be tied directly, when people speak of the working class now, they're talking about workers, not the working class. And I think a lot of what the counselor was saying is people don't, the taxpayer conversation. So it costs a lot more to be in poverty, to live in poverty, than it does to be wealthy. Like I said, to be poor, I can't have a car. So I have to pay that extreme price for taxi. When I go
Right.
to take a taxi to a store, if I can go to the grocery store, I
Right.
I'm headed to the discount rack, which has become too expensive. So
Wow.
there's this idea that, oh, we take care of ours, but then, as pointed out by you two, who's actually taking care of anybody? Because the NIMBYism has exploded, where people will say on one hand, oh, Canada's the greatest country. We take care of our own people. We're one of the best countries in
Hmm.
the world. But then at the same time, no, let's not fund that. No, I don't want that near my house. Let's close
Right.
treatment centers. Let's this. Let's. Who cares about the tents or a safety? Like all these really, I don't want to say uneducated in implying stupidity, but I don't think
Hmm.
we actually provide access to the actual education. Because what you two were just talking about with taxpayers, a lot of people don't understand that. Just like a lot of people will probably call you about the potholes in Hamilton.
Yep. Oh,
There,
absolutely.
there is a lack of understanding for how our political system works and how people engage in it or don't engage in it, and the repercussions of both. So I think one of the other things that we should highlight is things like this, what you're doing. This is the type of access that a lot of politicians don't like because informed, I don't want to say informed voters, but informed people make informed decisions. And we've had a good 5 years of uninformed decision making where
Hmm.
people will support something most perfectly highlighted by our neighbors to the south, but they will
Right.
support something that is absolutely blatantly obviously targeting them. And we're starting to do that up in Canada. It's just, for the most part, a lot of these repercussions haven't been felt by middle to upper class, I believe,
Right.
because, sir, like you said, the liberals know who to take care of.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
if you work, here's sir. If you are in poverty, because it wasn't just people not working that were excluded from CERB, it was a
Right.
minimum financial contribution the year before. So there were working poor who did not qualify for help. So
Right.
a lot of people, oh, we all got these checks. Well, they don't need checks. They've been getting checks from ODSP or from AISH or whatever,
Hmm.
AISH being the Alberta Disability. So I think it's just an education and not letting YouTube personalities be that education.
Well, you know what? Like I do enjoy that people are finding platforms. I find though that sometimes the information that's presented is not factual.
Mhm.
I have the privilege of being front and center to a lot of this stuff. And so over the next couple of, days and weeks and months, I do plan to invite people who are on those YouTube platforms to have discussions to be able to challenge their assertions because they get to argue from a place of authority that doesn't necessarily have all the information, or sometimes they present information as factual that is in fact not. We've been at this now for I've been doing this stream this morning for about an hour and 10 minutes. I want to wrap it up, but I want to give you each the opportunity to give final thoughts. Jay, final thoughts from you.
Final thoughts for me is the absolute solution to everything that's going on, whether it's unrealistic fear, although all fear is realistic right now because there's a lot of scary things going on. But the
Sure.
solution to most of the things that we can talk about is community.
Okay.
That's
I like it.
that's my main thing is community needs to be a focus going forward.
Got it. Love it. Counselor.
I would say, our gut, to sort of follow up what I was saying earlier, our gut reaction in during times like these when it's tough is to start, trying to, as one of my colleagues might say, tighten our belts, but we can't do it at the expense of of people. This is the time to invest in people, whether it's via transit, food banks, uh, guaranteed basic income, so on and so forth. This is a time to invest in people, not abandon them.
Awesome. Appreciate you logging on. Red, I see you there. Would love the opportunity to have the conversation. Maybe next time you'll jump on the live stream and we can actually debate what you've just said there. I would argue otherwise, particularly now, but that's a conversation for another time. Thank you so much for tuning in to Parliament to the People. I can't bring everybody to Parliament Hill, but I can do my best to bring Parliament Hill to you in these discussions. Thank you to Councillor Lucas Oakley for logging on. Thank you for Jay Woodruff for logging on, and for all of those who commented and engaged. I do appreciate